Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Swing a sparrow on a string. Angela opened her eyes to a new day, not knowing if it were morning. There were no windows in her room, and it could have been the middle of the afternoon, or even midnight. She heard no sounds except her own breathing. And when she awoke, she inhaled and exhaled heavily, as if she had just completed a marathon race instead of having slept for hours. Perhaps she had slept for days. She had stopped wondering about time months ago. Now she simply slept for as long as she was able, then stayed awake for as long as was necessary. She knew she would have to eat, that they would soon be coming with food, and had she felt stronger, she might have spat it back at them, as she had done when they first brought her here. But she had swallowed that rage a long time ago. Now, Angela ate whatever morsels they gave her, and recently she had to restrain herself from thanking them. She feared the day might come when she would feel grateful that they had allowed her to live, when she might find herself smiling at them as if she understood and accepted the perfect correctness of her captivity. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Although her hair was stringy and unwashed, she remembered how golden it had shimmered in the sun. Her face was still quite pretty, and once she had heard one guard tell another he had never seen eyes quite that blue. The other whispered what a pity it was if only she had a piece of paper, a pen, even a crayon. Maybe this time she would show them that she could create something useful and lasting that mattered to them, something that in turn would make her matter. When Angela had first arrived, they had eagerly granted the request of the 18-year-old girl and waited to see what gifts her imagination might offer them. She had succeeded only in producing a few formless scrawls that they said were not art, and some rhymeless gibberish that they told her was not poetry. They took away the paper, the pens, and the paintbrushes, and not long ago, the tall blonde guard, who wore the keys around his neck, had asked her if she might like to sing. Any tune would do, he told her. Please, oh please, let me try, Angela had begged. The next day, he brought to her room a small cassette recorder with a blank tape. Perhaps we will find the songbird in you, where we were unable to find the artist. Sing, and we promise to listen, he assured her. For days, Angela sang alone in her room, remembering what her mother had sung to her many years ago. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. A week later, she handed the cassette to the man with the keys and simply said, "Please." He stuffed the tape into his pocket and left without a word. The next day, the guard sat alongside her bed and informed her that he and the others had decided that she was no songbird. For a moment, his words had sounded like an apology. She knew she would never see the tall guard again. The wasted papers that Angela had filled with nonsense and the inarticulate squawks she had tried to pass off as music had convinced them that further efforts on their part would be foolish. From that day forward, the guards who silently delivered her food seemed unwilling to even look at her. Angela heard the key slip into the lock on the other side of the heavy door. She no longer pretended to be asleep when they came, because they did not care whether she were sleeping or awake. One of them always waited outside as the other entered. She heard the heavy jingle of keys and looked up. The keys were around the guard's neck. "You," she said. But the word was only a statement of fact, not sparked with the warmth that accompanies the recognition of a familiar face. Once uttered, the word sounded idiotic. "Yes," he answered, closing the door behind him. He did not look at her as he set the tray of food on the stand alongside her bed. She had expected no further conversation, and when he spoke again, his words startled her. "They told me to say the other guard had caught a flu." He pulled up the small wooden chair and sat, although the chair was too small, and he seemed not to know whether to fold his legs. "There is no flu. They wanted us to talk." His statement was ludicrous. She had not had a conversation with him in months, and those few she remembered had been pitifully brief and one-sided. "I don't understand," she said, as she selected a small bread crust on her tray. She had learned to keep her responses short, for the guards tired of her quickly. "I'd like to know about God," he said, as if this were meant as an answer. "Tell me how you feel about God. Tell me about your religion, your beliefs." "I have no belief in God. I have no religion." "Don't you have some sort of records about that?" She felt immediately sorry she had asked, but the guard ignored the question anyway. He fidgeted in the small chair. "You're an atheist, then? Or an agnostic? You have opinions regarding God's existence, or the lack of it?" He sounded almost hopeful. "I'm an apathist. I don't much think about it," she answered as she nibbled at the crust. She picked up a slab of egg yolk with her left hand, ignoring the silverware, leaned her head back, and dropped the yolk into her mouth. Her response oddly pleased him, although he did not smile. An apathist? That was a joke you just said. Admittedly, not a very good one, but it was a joke. Then you have a sense of humor. Tell me another joke. Angela looked hard at the man, not certain about how earnest her guard's question was. A joke? You mean, like, why did the chicken cross the road? The absurdity of her question seemed to increase the guard's excitement. Yes. Yes. Tell me, why did the chicken cross the road? There was anticipation in his voice, as if he sincerely were interested in the chicken's intentions. And when he leaned toward Angela for her response, his face revealed the hint of a smile. Perhaps the chicken was an apathist, she said. The guard's smile disappeared as quickly as if it were erased. That isn't funny. I'm sorry, but that isn't funny at all. His tone became flat, expressionless. He sounded like a man keeping some kind of score. No points for humor. Sorry. Next category. Can we talk politics? He asked. No. Sociology, science, history, law, philosophy. His questions now had become a formality, a checklist to be completed, filed, and forgotten. No. 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 Although Angela could not remember ever having had a discussion this long during her stay here, she wanted this conversation to end. Perhaps I could tell you why the philosopher crossed the road? No, I guess you're right. That wasn't very funny either. I suppose you'll be leaving now. Her question had anticipated his next words. The tall guard rose from the chair with difficulty, trying to maintain his dignity when he could not get up with his first attempt. I have one more question for you, Angela, he said. He had never called her by her name before, and his doing so struck her as odd. He walked to the foot of her bed and turned toward her. Do you know why you are here? He asked this without malice or emotion, with only the desire to know her answer, as he had wanted to know about songbirds and chickens. I'm here because you see me as a useless bird. Having said the words, she knew they had always been on her tongue, waiting to be spoken. I beg your pardon. You know, the sparrow who can no longer fly becomes useless to the other sparrows, a burden to them. I've broken my wing, isn't that right? And the flock has no further need of me. I'm impressed, the guard answered. That is quite a creative analogy from one who knows so little of creativity. He sat on the edge of the bed and moved close to Angela, as if to reveal a secret. Instead, he reached under the blanket and grabbed hold of her right hand, yanking it out from where she had kept it hidden. He held her arm straight up, and the pain caused her to wince. But this isn't exactly a broken wing, is it, Angela? It's a wilted arm, a useless limb. It is not pleasant to look at. It serves no function. and it belongs to you. It is you. The words came in furious bursts now, like machine gun pellets, and he shook her withered limb as he spoke. You see yourself as a wounded sparrow, do you? What happens if we take that sparrow and tie her leg to a string and swing her around in circles in a desperate attempt to make her fly? She struggles against hope to use her wings, her useless wings. And meanwhile, we swing her around and around and around, wasting our energy, wasting our time. And in the end, when we stop swinging her, she comes crashing down to earth anyway. Our time has been wasted. Her hopes have been destroyed. What is the point? Why even bother? He let go of her arm, allowing it to drop. For a moment, Angela stared at the shrunken arm as if it were a foreign thing that did not belong in the bed with her. She spoke without removing her eyes from it. A sparrow who can no longer fly can sing. And if she can't sing, she can still feel, can still love? The guard interrupted. That's exactly right, Angela. We asked this sparrow to sing, and she could not. But we realized she may be capable of love. The kind of love that could only result in frustration for her. Because the real question is she capable of being loved? Do the words she writes encourage love? Does her beauty or intellect in any way inspire it? It is unlikely that anyone would even try to love her because of that hideous limb. Not that all physical impediments are repulsive. Perhaps if she were only blind. Stop. Please, stop. Angela pleaded. Her brief taste of defiance had made her want to gag. You want to cover your ears, don't you? You want to block out the words, make me go away. Maybe you would even like to strike me, he continued. But you can't do it, can you? That limb just lies there like a dead weight. Do you see my point? I have my other arm, whose only function is to hide its companion. No, Angela, I'm sorry, but the time has come for us to stop swinging the sparrow's string. His anger slowly dissolved, and he fell silent for a moment. He attempted to hold her wilted hand in his, but she pulled it away. Instead, he took her other hand. But first, I have something I want to show you. Something you need to see. He sat on the bed and placed her fingers on his left leg below the knee. Rub your hand along my leg, Angela. Does the calf feel peculiar to you? Congenital defect, they called it. Like they called yours. The leg is gone, at least from the knee down. Amazing what they can do with prosthetics today. But you see, I have my particular talents. I happen to be quite good at drawing people out, at enabling them to find a way to compensate for their physical shortcomings. And I can be quite decisive when called upon to make the kind of decisions that others would find distasteful. No one ever asked me to sing or to fly. But when they came for me, I simply told them what I could do. Angela struggled to pull her hand free as her anger rose inside her like hot bile. But you also decide who is to be exterminated. You decide who the state no longer regards as useful. What gives you the right? This gives me the right, he shouted, his breath hot on her face as he tapped her hand on the hard wood of his prosthetic leg. This has forced me to find my usefulness to others, just as your pathetic limb has forced you to admit that you have none. And I have no intention of relinquishing my usefulness by allowing you to continue your hollow existence. I refuse not to matter. The guard's renewed anger seemed to embarrass him, and he turned away from Angela. He ran his fingers through his blonde hair in an attempt to collect himself. And when he again looked down at his leg, he noticed that Angela's hand was grasping it. Angela knew he had been unaware of her touch until he had looked. When his eyes locked with hers, her mouth curled in a bitter smile. "I feel this," she said, as she ran the tiny hand of the wilted arm along his wooden leg. "I feel this with both of my hands, even the one you call useless. Tell me what you feel when I touch you. Does this prosthetic device extend all the way to your heart?" Angela tapped on the artificial limb as if she were expecting a reflexive kick. "A curious question," he answered. "You might have made a fine idealist if you had believed in God." She moved close to his face and whispered, "To get to the other side, that is why a chicken would cross the road, isn't it?" He paused for a moment to look at her. "Such blue eyes," he said. "Such exquisitely beautiful blue eyes." He called for the guards to take her, and within moments, 3 entered the room, and another 2 waited by the doorway. She presented no struggle and went quietly with them. She wondered as they walked if one of them would take her hand. The shadow, the night, was silent, draped in an inky darkness that swallowed the world outside the small security room. I sat alone, surrounded by an array of flickering screens that illuminated my face in a ghastly blue glow. The hum of the surveillance equipment was the only sound in the room, its monotony broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the distant wail of a siren. I was the lone sentinel, tasked with safeguarding the premises during the bewitching hours of the night shift. Hours had passed since I settled into my chair, my eyes diligently scanning the labyrinthine halls and desolate rooms of the building. Everything appeared as it should, empty, lifeless, and eerily quiet. But as the clock ticked deeper into the night, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. The air seemed charged with a palpable tension, as if something sinister lurked just beyond the reach of the camera lenses. I leaned forward, adjusting my seat and peering closer at one of the monitors. In the dim light, the corridor appeared to stretch endlessly, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long, ominous shadows on the walls. As my eyes darted across the screen, I saw a movement, a mere blur at the edge of the frame. My breath caught in my throat, and I focused on the camera, my heart pounding. There, in the grainy black and white footage, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadows. The figure moved slowly, almost purposefully, down the hallway, its gait uneven and unsettling. I squinted, trying to make out any distinguishing features, but the face remained hidden. Shrouded in darkness, a shiver crept up my spine as I grabbed the radio at my side. "Central, this is security. I've got a visual on an unidentified person in Corridor C. I need backup." Static crackled before a voice responded, thick with sleep. "Copy that. We're sending someone your way. Stay on the line." I nodded, my eyes never leaving the screen. The figure continued its eerie saunter, disappearing momentarily from one camera's view, only to reappear on another. It seemed to be toying with me, always staying just out of clear sight. A phantom in the night. Minutes dragged on like hours as I awaited the arrival of my colleagues. The figure persisted in its haunting stroll, growing closer to the main entrance with every passing moment. I gripped the edges of the desk, my knuckles turning white, and watched in dread as it reached the lobby. As if sensing my gaze, the figure turned its head toward the camera, and I gasped. Its eyes, 2 points of cold, blue light, glowed in the darkness, fixated on the lens, as if it could see me. I recoiled, my heart pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. "Central, it's looking at the camera," I stammered into the radio. "I need someone here now." The response was a garbled mess of static and fragmented words. Desperation clawed at me as I watched the figure approach the security room. It moved with an unnatural grace, its movements silent and deliberate. My fingers fumbled for the door lock, and I managed to secure it just as the figure reached the hallway outside. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room, and I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow and rapid. I could hear its footsteps now, soft but deliberate, as it approached the door. Each step sent a chill down my spine, and I prayed that the lock would hold. The figure stopped just outside the door, and I held my breath, willing myself to be invisible. Through the frosted glass window, I saw its silhouette, tall and imposing, Its hand reached out, fingers curling around the doorknob. I bit down hard on my lip to stifle a scream. My entire body tensed, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. Seconds stretched into an eternity before the figure withdrew its hand, and I heard its footsteps fading away down the corridor. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The building seemed to groan and sigh around me, the very walls whispering secrets that I couldn't comprehend. Summoning my courage, I cautiously unlocked the door and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, devoid of any signs of the figure. I hesitated for a moment before venturing out, my flashlight casting shaky beams of light across the walls. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and I could feel unseen eyes watching my every move. I retraced the figure's steps, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Each flickering light and distant sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that the figure was still there, just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I finally reached the lobby, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The room was still, the silence broken only by the distant wail of sirens. I let out a shaky breath, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Whatever had been in the building with me was gone, but its presence lingered, a haunting memory etched into the very walls. I made my way back to the security room, my steps quickening with each passing moment. As I entered, I glanced at the monitors, half expecting to see the figure staring back at me. But the screens were empty, showing only the empty halls and deserted rooms. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling as I reached for the radio. Central, this is security. I think it's gone. I don't know what it was, but it's gone now. The response was a crackle of static. And then a voice came through, tinged with concern. Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance? I hesitated for a moment before shaking my head, even though I felt far from all right. No, I'm fine. Just shaken up. I'll be okay. The sun began to rise, casting a faint light through the windows and dispelling the darkness that had settled over the building. My relief was palpable, but the memory of that night would forever haunt my dreams. I had come face to face with something beyond explanation, something that defied logic and reason. As the day shift arrived to relieve me, I gathered my belongings and made my way to the exit. The building, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien and menacing. I stepped out into the daylight, the warmth of the sun, a stark contrast to the cold grip of fear that still clung to me. I glanced back at the building one last time, my eyes drawn to the security room window. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement inside, a shadowy figure standing amidst the monitors. But it was gone in an instant, leaving me to wonder if it had ever been there at all. I walked away, my footsteps quickening with every step. The world around me seemed to blur, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a nightmare. I didn't know what I had encountered, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Some things, it seemed, were better left in the darkness, where they belonged. Subconscious convictions. They say in the moment of tragedy, time slows down. During those precious seconds, the mind accelerates. Your surroundings are a blur and disappear as your attention turns inward. You consider the events that led you to this point and what you could or should have done different. You consider who this will affect. You're suddenly acutely aware of every regret you have, things you wish you had done, or words you wish you had said to people you may never see again. What they don't tell you is that during this time of reflection, those thoughts don't matter. The steps that led you to this point have already been taken. You cannot change the past, and now must deal with whatever comes as a consequence of your own actions. But what if those thoughts did matter? I'm going to lose my job. That was the first thought that raced through my mind as I watched the man pull a gun from beneath his baggy jacket. The same man I had passed through security only minutes before. This was my first day on the job, and I was already going to lose it. The years I spent in college, scrounging for food and borrowing my friends' couches and car seats just to have a place to sleep. The loans I took from friends, family, and disreputable sources. None of that mattered anymore, as the fruit of my hard-earned labor was going to sour and rot on the very first day. The moment the glint of his pistol caught my attention, my hand was already reflexively reaching for my own holster. In the mere moment it took to draw my gun and form the words on my tongue for the man to drop his weapon, I was presented with a choice. Do I fire at the man whose own gun is pointed at the young woman behind the desk? Or do I wait and try to talk him down? If I hesitate, he could kill the woman before I fire. Or I could fire first, not giving him the chance to stand down. What if the gun was fake, and this was just an attempt at intimidation? Does this scenario meet the requirements for the rules of engagement? With my decision made, I shout for the man to put down the gun. Before the last word had fled from my mouth, an explosive sound that will, from that moment on, forever haunt my waking moments rings out. I made the wrong judgment. The man pulled the trigger. Time continues to crawl by as the young woman's body drops to the ground, red misting the air and painting the wall behind her as she crumples out of sight behind the desk. seemingly to compensate for its slowed pace. Time then speeds up. People scream and drop to the ground. A mother flings herself over her child. An elderly man clutches his chest and faints. I have little recollection of what follows. I'm sure police arrive and subdue the man, as I suddenly find myself sitting outside on the curb. Uniformed officers question me. I'm not sure what answers I give them. All I can do is stare at their holstered guns. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for the man to pull his weapon and end a life. Those 3 seconds play on repeat over and over. I lose my job due to my own negligence. If I had followed proper procedure, I would have found the man's gun as he came through security. Out of job, and with a permanent black mark on my record, my degree and certifications become nothing more than useless pieces of paper. My brand new car I financed is repossessed. I return to couch surfing and lending in order to get through each day. Loud sounds now terrify me. The bang of a car door closing has me reflexively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there, only for nausea to rise at the mere thought of a weapon. Red mist and a body crumbling to the ground. It only took 3 seconds for that man to pull his pistol and kill. I can no longer make decisions for myself. I fear that whatever choice I make will be the wrong one, somehow causing another life to end. Second guessing every move I make completely overwhelms my day-to-day actions. I cannot help but spiral within my own tortured thoughts to the point where I am too terrified to even move. It only took 3 seconds. The instant the man pulled the gun from his jacket, instinct led me to grab my son, push him to the tile floor, and cover his small body with my own. The only thought racing through my mind was his protection. Having only recently lost his father, I couldn't fathom losing Evan as well. A spray of red. The body of a young woman falling to the floor. The thud of her body colliding with tile echoing in my head. What if that had been Evan? What if he were older and the one working behind the desk when someone decided that they would end his life? Who would have protected him if I wasn't here? The security guard by the door, frozen with his gun raised, solidifies my resolve that no one can protect Evan like I can. It takes 3 police officers to pry me from my son's protection. Only after several reassurances that the gunman has been subdued and that we are safe am I willing to detach myself from Evan. Sweeping my sobbing 4-year-old into my arms, I hold him close as I provide the police with my statement, receive the okay from medical personnel to leave, and speed the safety of our small home. That could have been Evan standing behind the counter. No one can protect him like I can. With school shootings, a very real possibility. I pull Evan out of school just in case. I find a new job and that will allow me to work from home while homeschooling at the same time. Groceries are delivered to the house. Contact-free, of course. The only times I find myself not being able to avoid leaving the safety of our home are for regular visits to the doctor's office. I put these off for as long as I can without risking Evan's health. Every individual we pass is a threat, as who knows what weapons they carry, hidden beneath their clothing. Who knows what intentions they may have, or when they might decide to take their frustrations out on my innocent child. A local news broadcast covers the story of an injured criminal waking during surgery and attacking the caretakers and 2 bystanders. What if Evan and I had been there for an appointment? Even the hospitals weren't safe anymore. I called and canceled Evan's upcoming checkup. The doctor's office called at least once a day for a week straight to reschedule Evan's appointment. I let every call ring to voicemail. I know what is best for Evan. No one can protect him like I can. The phone calls eventually stop. The following week, 2 police officers arrive at our house, claiming the hospital staff called, asking for them to ensure we were okay. I reiterate through the closed door that all is well, but I refuse to open my home to them. I can see from the window the weapons they carry. What if they are not really police officers? What if they are here to hurt Evan? The next day, the police return with a woman dressed in a pantsuit and claiming to be from Child Protective Services. I refuse them entry and tell Evan to hide in his room. The woman claims that she is worried for my son's well-being and begs me to open the door. She doesn't have to worry about Evan. That is my job. Only I can protect him. They took Evan from me. They came in force, showing me documents that mean nothing to me as I sit handcuffed on my own couch. They claim I am not mentally fit to take care of my own son, as if they know anything about me or the dangers the outside world presents to my innocent child. I try to get them to understand that he needs me, that only I can protect him. Why can't they understand? They tell me I can argue my case in court. Why does no one understand? How can no one see how dangerous the world is? It only takes one man with a gun deciding to end a life. No one can protect Evan like I can. The customer service smile I have plastered on my face falls away as the man across the desk from me reaches beneath his jacket and pulls free a pistol. Despite the situation, I find myself surprised by the condition of the gun. My father was an avid weapon collector, and, as his only child, I was subjected to hours of instruction on all topics involving firearms. The man's gun isn't anything special and is a brand that most households have stashed away somewhere for home defense. What caught my attention was the poor condition of the weapon. Scuffs and scratches cover most of the surface, and bare metal glints through gouged paint and texture. Wherever this man had obtained the gun from, there was a good chance it was either stolen or sold illegally. By the time the last remnants of my smile disappear, and my quick analysis of the man's pistol ends, I realize too late that I am the target of his aggression. Raised by a gun enthusiast, I thought I had seen them from every angle. I realized then that never have I stared down the barrel of one. It was a sight immediately burned into my mind, and one I never wanted to see again. I watch in slow motion as the muscles just under the skin of the man's hands tense, and his finger begin to pull the trigger. I can't help but think with irony that I won't have to worry about living with that fear. Silence follows the explosion of a firing pistol. The scene before me is familiar, though I can't determine why or how. I stand before a young woman, a waist-high desk, the only barrier between us. My right hand grips the cold, unfamiliar metal of the pistol I purchased from a stranger earlier this morning. I stare down the top of the gun at the young woman. She seems more interested in the details of the gun rather than the fact that it is aimed directly at her. There is something familiar about this woman, though I am sure I have never met her before. An irritating itch nags in the back of my mind that something here isn't right. I have been here before, but where am I? I want to turn and take in my surroundings, but am unable to move anything other than my eyes. Time seems to have slowed to a near pause. Glancing at the surface of the desk, I notice a stack of credit card flyers. Oh, that's right. I'm at a bank. One of the few left that actually handle cash instead of digital currency. Why am I at the bank? The memories come slowly, as though I am recollecting them through a vat of honey. The images are hazy at first, but slowly become clearer. I am desperate. The company I worked at collapsed due to fraud. As an accounting associate, I was one of the prime suspects in the case. It has been 2 years since I was accused as an accomplice, and the investigation is still ongoing. In those 2 years, my entire life fell apart. My fiancée left me, taking the word of the media over the man she planned to marry. She took our unborn child with her, refusing to allow me any part in the child's life. Do the investigation. I couldn't find a job. I lost my fiancé, child, and career. I lost all reason to continue to try. All I have left is a roof over my head. And even that will be gone soon, unless I do something. Robbing the bank wasn't a thought-out plan, but rather a decision made in desperation. Why had I thought this would be a good idea? I've never done anything like this before. This isn't me. Who have I become? The eyes of the woman before me begin to widen as she realizes she is staring down the barrel of my gun. Realization, surprise, fear, and then acceptance cross her features within a heartbeat. My hand tenses, my index finger beginning to pull the trigger. Wait, I've been here before. I've done this before. I've killed this woman already. Why am I doing this? For money? Is this really how far I have fallen? Would I really consider killing a woman for whatever change she might have in the drawer? Wait. No. I have already considered this. In fact, I have already done it. I am staring down the sights of my gun into the eyes of a dead woman. That is why she is familiar to me. I know I've killed her, but I don't remember what happened afterwards. Was I arrested? Was I shot? Glancing to my right, I notice a woman in the process of throwing herself over a young boy. Her son, Evan. Evan? Why do I know the boy's name? That isn't all I know. I know that the mother will be so scarred from my actions that she will hide her child away from the world, paranoid and plagued by the idea of some stranger hurting the only family she had left. Evan will spend the rest of his childhood in the foster care system. I've never met them before, so why do I know this? I shift my attention to my left, where a young security guard points his own firearm in my direction, his mouth open in a silent shout. I can see the fear and indecision wrought into his features. He will lose his job and any chance of a healthy life due to my actions today. Finally, I look back to the woman before me. She loses her life because of me. These are my victims. I can see the consequences these innocent bystanders will spend the remainder of their lives trying to cope with. All because I was desperate to pay my rent. I don't want this. I don't want to kill this young woman who has done nothing to wrong me. I don't want to cause the security guard to spend the rest of his life terrified of strangers and loud noises. I don't want Evan to grow up without his mother. My hand relaxes, and the gun soundlessly clatters to the ground before everything fades to black. Looking up from the report scrolling across his tablet, Jared smiled at his supervisor, Dr. Daniels, who had just entered the lab. "Good afternoon, doctor." The subject passed on the first run. His remorse caused a shift in his subconscious, and he dropped the gun before killing the woman this time. Dr. Daniels nodded, a bit of the ever-present tension in his shoulders relaxing. "That is good. Pull him out of the simulator and send the report to the recovery team. With luck, he'll be eligible for reintegration within the next year or so." After receiving the affirmative from his associate, Dr. Daniels headed for the door, sparing one last glance at the man lying on the bed, connected to the simulator unit. The device was revolutionary to solving overcrowding within the municipal system. Based on their progress with therapists and reports provided by behavioral specialists, qualified convicts are removed from their cells and transferred to one of a few facilities housing advanced neurological simulators. Rather than spend years within a cell comprised of bars and mortar, they are instead imprisoned within the walls of their own subconscious. They are then subjected to relive the events of the crime they committed, as well as experience firsthand the impact their misconduct left on their victims. The results were astounding, proving that remorse and guilt, if stressed on a deeply subconscious level, could change the morality of an individual. Rather than spend the remainder of their lives behind bars, these ex-convicts would receive a second chance. Depending on their results after undergoing intense therapy, they would be allowed to reintegrate into a controlled section of society, a sector that was developed specifically for these individuals. They would not be allowed to return to the public, as retribution is still demanded for their actions. They would, however, be provided the opportunity to work in their chosen profession, earn a wage, and make something better of themselves while serving out the remainder of their sentence. Tearing his gaze from the man lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Daniels stepped out of the room and headed for the next lab. Watchers. The asylum's security surveillance room was a claustrophobic chamber adorned with peeling wallpaper, crumbling shelves stacked with aged records, a small wooden desk, and an uncomfortable metal chair that creaked under the most minute amount of weight. A single rotary dial telephone sat on the desk. A thick layer of dust covered every surface but the desk and chair. The dim overhead light bulb flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows across the aging linoleum floor that peeled in the corners. The centerpiece of this dilapidated room was a massive wall lined with outdated, grayscale CCTV monitors. Each monitor displayed a different section of the asylum, a haunting panorama of deserted hallways, medical examination rooms furnished with rusting metal beds and equipment, large dining areas, office spaces, and various other rooms possibly used for forms of recreation. The monitors were ancient, relics of a bygone era. Their screens emitted a faint, sickly glow that seemed to exaggerate the shadows lurking in the corners of the room. The images displayed were grainy, distorted, and pixelated. A small handwritten label accompanied each screen, indicating the location of the video feed. The cameras themselves, once cutting-edge technology, were now obsolete and barely functional, occasionally losing connection for a few seconds at a time. The crackling audio of static from the occasional disconnected video feeds added to the eerie ambience. It was as if the very essence of the asylum had seeped into the wires and circuits, imbuing an unsettling presence into the surveillance system. James was 2 hours into his new job and already regretted accepting the position. As a college dropout, struggling to make ends meet, the The job posting for a part-time security surveillance officer with great pay was almost too good to be true. There were no certifications or education required to apply. The agency didn't even require any previous experience. The pay was nearly double the current minimum wage. The only downside to the posting had been the hours. From 9 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, James was surprised to find he was the only one to accept the position following the interview. Unwilling to let such a good paying opportunity pass, he agreed to all terms he was presented during his interview and had no follow-up questions of his own when asked. As such, he was hired on the spot and given the time and address of his first shift. Looking back, James realized he should have asked at least a few questions, such as where he would be working and why no one else had accepted the position following the interview. Lunaria Sanitarium, built in 1920, was nestled deep within the forests of the Pacific Northwest. The nearest city, taking at least an hour and a half by car, was Portland, Oregon. The hospital consisted of 3 separate buildings. The central 4-story building contained the medical rooms, recreational suites, and other administrative offices. Each 2-story wing building housed bedrooms with minimal furniture, a dining hall complete with rows of tables and chairs, and basements with locked holding rooms. Only the hallway leading to the doors for the holding rooms contained a camera in each basement. Every room in the sanitarium still contained original furniture from the time it was abandoned, as if all inhabitants simply left for the day and never returned. Vacated in the late 50s, the entire property was left untouched for nearly 7 decades. Courtyards, fields, and small farming patches were overgrown, nearly reclaimed by the forest whose land it was built upon. Despite the impending vegetation, the buildings themselves were surprisingly in good condition, despite the rust, mold, and rotting surfaces. Upon relieving the daytime officer at 9 o'clock, a gangly old man who provided no explanation of his duties other than not to fall asleep, James settled in for a long night. The metal chair behind the desk protested against his weight, and he made a mental note to bring a cushion for his next shift, figuring he would need help staying awake and being kept from boredom. James brought a backpack stocked with snacks, energy drinks, his handheld gaming console, and a few books his sister had lent him. He had debated whether or not he would get in trouble for playing games or reading while on duty. But how hard could watching screens of empty rooms be? Surely he would get in more trouble for falling asleep rather than being partially distracted. Gaze darting between monitors on the wall before him, a sense of unease settled deep within his gut. The screens were grainy and out of focus, an occasional ripple in the feed, giving the effect of movement. and catching his attention. The wall of monitors was so wide that he had trouble viewing every screen without having to turn his head, causing the screens of the opposite side to disappear from his focus entirely. As the minutes ticked by with no changes, James relaxed and pulled his gaming console from his pack. He kept the volume low, just in case, and was careful to peek at the screens between each level of his game. The few games he owned that didn't require internet connection quickly lost his interest. He glanced at the time on his cell phone. 10:30. An hour and a half into his shift, and he was already bored. As James reached for his backpack, the scratchy sound of static caught his attention. One of the screens in the top row, which was labeled East Wing Dining Hall, showed nothing but black, gray, and white interference. Heart leaping into his throat, James watched as the lines danced across the screen. Less than a handful of seconds later, the feed resumed, and he was presented again with long rows of tables and chairs. Breathing a sigh of relief, James slumped back into his chair, the metal groaning in protest. Waiting for his heart rate to settle, James took in the creepy aspects of the dining hall, showing through the feed. Long, wooden tables made up a majority of the space, looking to be made of one solid piece of wood. James could only imagine how heavy they must be. Chairs dotted the spaces between the tables, all pulled out and looked to have been haphazardly pushed around, a few even laying on their sides. In the far left corner of the room, a single door stood open, leading to the hallway beyond. James's attention fixated on the chairs. Had they been pushed out from the tables before? Racking his memory, he thought that they had been pushed in, not that he had paid any special attention to the small details. Clearing his thoughts with a shake of his head, he pulled one of his energy drinks out and popped the cap. Perhaps he just remembered wrong. While sipping the carbonated liquid energy, James pulled out a notebook and pen and began taking notes on the condition of each room, more for the peace of his own mind and to pass the time than any other reason.